be erected on those foundations as the next 3 millennia were ticked off on the time clock, and to be read in a sequence in detail as nowhere else on earth. 53 centuries of unbroken history. That's from the book The Story of Civilization, Man's Own Show, page 297 by George A. Dorsey. Herodotus noticed that the Egyptian women went to the marketplace and engaged in trade, while their husbands stayed at home and sat at the loom. And their sons were not compelled to support their parents, but the daughters were obliged to do so, whether they chose to do that or not. Diodorus Schoolus, another reference to the matriarchal character of the Egyptian royal family, notes a similar state of affairs among the commoners. Among private citizens, says that historian, the husband by terms of the marriage agreement appertains to the wife, and it is stipulated between them that the man shall obey the woman at all times. You ladies hear that?
Read that again.
Diodorus Schoolus, after reference to the matriarchal character of the Egyptian royal family, notes a similar state of affairs among the commoners. Among the private citizens, says that historian, the husband by terms of the marriage agreement appertains to the wife, and it is stipulated between them that the man shall obey the woman at all times, in all things, cited by Dr. Robert A. Fault in The Mothers, Volume 1, edition, page 279. These customs seem strange to the Greeks, but they were normal features of African societies. This point is discussed by Bill Font as follows, and here's the quotation then from Bill Font that says the same thing basically. According to Sir Gaston Maspero, the Egyptians made their first appearance on the stage of history about 8,000 to 10,000 years BC. That's 12,000 years ago. On page 97, Egypt's first golden age was initiated by an invasion from Ethiopia. According to Petrie, quote, a conqueror of Sudani features founded the third dynasty, and many entirely new ideas entered the country. This new movement culminated in the vast schemes of Khufu, one of history's most dominating personalities. With him, the lines of Egyptian growth were established, and the course of events became subject of the written record. That's from a book called The Modern Discovery of the Unknown Past by Sir Flanders Petrie in the Encyclopedia of Modern Knowledge, page 112. I mean, over and over again, he gives you the book, the author, and the page number. Now, I'm going to do some quotations about the pyramid. As I read this stuff, you know, we think we're fantastic today. But some of the stuff I read in this book about what they did in Egypt just blows my mind totally. 10,000 years ago, folks doing stuff like this. The pyramid itself was 20 years in the building. It is a square, 800 feet each way, built entirely of polished stone, fitted together with the utmost care. The stones of which it is composed are none of them less than 30 feet in length. After laying the stones for the base, they raised the remaining stones to their places by means of machines formed of short wooden planks. There's an inscription in Egyptian characters on the pyramid which records the quantity of radishes, onions, and garlic consumed by the laborers who constructed it. And I perfectly well remember that the interpreter who read the writing to me said that the money expended in this way was about 1,600 talents of silver. A talent in ancient Egypt contained about 56 pounds of silver. So the modern equivalent of 1,600 talents would be the value of 89,000 pounds of silver. 89,000 pounds of silver. If this then is a true record, what a vast sum must have been spent on the iron tools used in the work and on the feeding and clothing of the laborers, considering the length of time the work lasted, which has already been stated, and additional time in no small space, I imagine, which must have been occupied by the quarrying of stones, their conveyance, and the formation of the underground apartments. That's in the book of History of Herodotus, page 125. The Japanese tried, in the last 10 years, duplicate the work of the pyramids, constructing the pyramids. Their equipment got stuck in the sand, fell over. After several months, they abandoned it entirely. They couldn't do it. You know, and yet 8 to 10,000 years, ago, folks had the knowledge how to move things. There's even been some speculation. This is pure speculation that they may have understood how to move things using sound. The whole open sesame idea comes from the fact that there's certain words that they believe that when the doors on the pyramid were first constructed, there were certain words you could say to make the doors open. And there's a stela, a relief, a picture of 8 men carrying a huge stone on their shoulders. A stone much too heavy to be carried by 8 men. And so we don't know how they did it really. As advanced we are today, we don't know really how they did some of the basics of building a pyramid. Yes, sir.
I think I talked about this in the other. I think I talked about this in the other class last year, but there was a white guy in the early part of the 20th century named Ed Lee Scowlin, and he built this island down in Florida. It's they call it the Coral Castle. These huge stones, and he was able to move them and manipulate them. And they asked him how he was able to do it. He had apparently done a lot of studying, read a lot about ancient Kemet, and he said that he found out the secrets of leverage, the science of leverage in nature. And there's no way, he was a little guy. He's maybe 100 pounds. And he was maybe in his 60s or something. Apparently he fallen in love with this girl and she rejected him. And so, he built this castle to commemorate her. That's the mythology around it. I don't know if that's true or not, but there is this place down there. I mean, and you can actually touch some of the stones and they can turn and stuff. And I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, some of these things are just, he built a whole castle. It was like an island kind of castle. And they had it on the Travel Channel some years ago. I have it on tape where they did a little piece on it. And he said that he did it the exact same way that the Egyptians did built the pyramids.
There's so much stuff in the world that the average person never comes in contact with. Baba?
There's the Temple of Baalbek is another one. Stones 8 feet wide, 10 feet high, and 60 feet long are in place right now as we speak. There are some that are still in the quarry. And all the evidence, the writers say, show that when they go up in the mountains to cut those stones to bring them down to where they're going to be put in place, they come down in a beeline, straight. And I just put the book down. It blew my mind.
The French astronomer Abbé Thomas Moreau, director of the Observatory of Bourges, wrote a book entitled The Mysterious Science of the Pharaohs. In this work, the abbé argues that the Great Pyramid was used as a vault for the preservation of scientific instruments and of standard weights and measures rather than a tomb. And by the way, you can still read books saying that the pyramids were a tomb. That's popular fiction, although no body has ever been found in there. And then this part. In place of a sarcophagus, there's a granite slab, which evidently served as a standard of measure. The length of the slab is 1/10,000,000th of the distance from either pole from the center of the earth. That slab, by the way, now is housed where? In the Louvre. It's called the meter bar. It's the standard for all measurement now in the world. Now, if that slab is 1/10,000,000th of the distance from either pole to the center of the earth, what did that say they knew? The size of the earth and the shape. This invariable distance, only recently determined by modern scientists, is the basis of the metric system. The distance from each of the poles to the center of the earth is 3,949.79 miles. From this measurement, we are unable to calculate the circumference of the earth through the poles, which is 24,8 817.32 miles. Abu Marot is convinced that this fact was known to the Egyptian astronomers 6,000 years ago. The Chaldeans were able students of astronomy, but their best estimate of the circumference of the Earth was 24,000 miles, so that the Egyptians had it down to precision. In terms, it seems that the knowledge of mathematics and astronomy among the ancient Egyptians was considerably more extensive and exact than we had hitherto been led to suspect. The height of the Great Pyramid is 1/billionth of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. The height of the Great Pyramid is 1/billionth of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. He didn't say 1.2 billionth, he said 1/billionth. Exactly. A unit of measure not accurately established in modern times until 1874. Okay? And it brings to mind the fact that Dogons, of course, were talking about Sirius B and Sirius A in their mythology hundreds of years ago. And it's only been about 45, 50 years ago the scientists first time with telescopes they will see it. Okay. Our ancient forefathers knew things. They had a way of making contact with information that we've not learned in our modern age. I used to give lectures for the Association of Black Scientists, and I would tell them about George Washington Carver. I've told the story here. They asked Carver how he did the things he did. Carver said he went out into the woods, he'd sit and look at a plant, and he'd ask the plant, tell me, why did God make you and what can you do? And Carver said, the plant told him. Now, I was trained as a research chemist, and it's automatic in research chemistry when you're trying to do something that you're probably going to have to try 1,000 times before you get it. You try A and that doesn't work, try B and C and D, and, A, B, B, C, D, X, X, Y, Z, Z, and sooner or later, by accident, you might hit it. You might spend your whole life and never hit it. But Carver said he'd go out and ask the plant, why did God make you? And what can I do with you? And he said the plant would tell him. Now, it seemed to me that if that's a methodology, that's a whole lot more effective than going through trial and error. And it must have worked for Carver because he came up with 300 products. He wasn't spending a whole lot of time experimenting. He was going to the laboratory and doing stuff.
I think you're right, Doc. I think we don't ask enough.
Yeah.
Or we ask the wrong one.
And we're not, really, this is very important. We have been trained, all of us, by people who use a different part of their brain than our ancestors used. And we've been trained by people who understand things only by separating things rather than putting things together. And if we can begin to retrain ourselves to tune into nature and tune into the universe, I would suspect that not only would we be happier, but we might find ways to do a whole lot of things we can't do today simply because of the way we've been trained. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. In the last class when you were talking about the birth of the sun
Yes.
and the macrocosm, and
Yes.
that was fascinating. But I wondered, since it's as above, so below, how does that parallel to the microcosm, and what does it say about our spiritual evolution, or does it? And that's because you're talking about different parts of the brain communicating with nature.
Well, here again, if we go back almost 13,000 years ago, they started formulating this whole thing of the zodiac. And whether they understood something or we just falling in line with what they put down in the first place or not, it seems to me that things are going exactly the way they said they would go. They said that at a certain time in history, there'd be a focus on the expansion of knowledge, the age of Aquarius. It seems to me, looking at things now, that once the age of Aquarius started dawning, all these things that have been right in front of our face the whole time, we're now becoming conscious of. You go back and look at the other periods, the Piscean period, period of Pisces, the period, how things lined up during the period of Aries, how twinship became important at a certain time in history. They seem to have a way of understanding. It's almost like they could see past, present, and future being one. You know, and it's just fascinating to me that people could so long ago put in place things that we take for granted today that are no easy accomplishments. You know, we would not. Most of us do not know how to find direction north. Yet our ancestors knew. They knew how to follow the stars to get north from down south. They knew how to see the way streams are moving, understand, you know, what stream to take to go north. They moved through uncharted forests. They didn't have interstate highways. They moved through uncharted forests and head straight north. And we've lost that ability. When I first came to Washington, D.C., I met a lady. She had all kinds of bushes out in the backyard. And if you had a sour stomach, she'd go out there and pick something and make some tea out of it. And that'd cure your stomach. You know, we had levels of knowledge, you know, the old folks had levels of knowledge that we really can't explain how they knew some of the things they knew. And among the things they did, they were able to figure out, think about that. Our year is only one part of a 25,820 year cycle. The great year, the time it takes the sun to come back to the same place in the universe, is divided into 12 ages. Those ages, they gave names. You know, we go to the bars and we say, what's your sign? We don't realize the science behind that, you know, and we trivialize it, but that took painstaking work for years by people whose attitude was not, again, as our attitude, we have an instantaneous attitude. Gotta be done right now. They were willing to, you know, wait years to do things. And the beginner work that would not be completed for eons thereafter. There are a lot of things we need to look into. And I'm convinced if we begin to orient ourselves in some of the ways that they oriented themselves, there's no telling what we might be able to do. You know, we're trying to cure cancer now. You know, the cure for cancer might be totally obvious. It just simply might be the fact that we haven't been trained to see it. You know, maybe looking in the wrong place. Sure.
I've always been fascinated at, here we are, I mean, floating, this earth is floating in space, and this earth is like a little pebble in the solar system, I mean, it's just mind-boggling that, and we have consciousness, and it's just fascinating that we, you know, that we can actually know that there's no limit to space.
There are a million billion stars in the universe. A million billion stars. Not planets. Stars have planets. There are a million billion stars. You know. I'm convinced there's intelligent life somewhere out here. Not on this planet, but I'm convinced that there's intelligent life somewhere. You know. We over the left-hand corner of the universe, you know, a million billion stars. And most of us go through our entire lives, have no feeling of the majesty of, you know, this whole place. Yeah, that's fantastic, yeah.
That reminds me of a graffiti you used to see on on the subway in New York, he used to say, "Is there any intelligent life left on this planet?" And somebody would write another handwriting, "Yeah, but I'm only visiting."
The height of the Great Pyramid is 1/10th of the distance from the Earth to the Sun, a unit of measure not accurately established in modern times until 1874. Abbe Moreau notes that this pyramid is oriented within 1/12 of a degree. 1/12 of a degree. There are 360 degrees in a circle. The pyramid is oriented within 1/12 of 1 degree. Okay? A remarkably accurate precision, and that the parallel of the longitude passing through the pyramid traverses the most land and least sea of any in the world, a fact which also applies to the parallel of latitude passing through the structure, which means that the pyramid is situated at the geographic center of landmass of the planet Earth. It's hard to put something at a geographic center of landmass of the planet Earth unless you know where the land and planet Earth is. Okay, we've been lied to and deceived. People have traveled all around this planet for years. Long before the European Magellan, who circumnavigated the globe, our folks been circumnavigating the globe for years. That's how we got around the globe in the first place, And it's our responsibility to begin bringing some truth to people. Who knows what our kids might be able to do, or our grandkids, if we can free them from some of the mental incarceration that we've been in.
Good term.
Is that the term used, Baba? Conceptual incarceration. There you go. Conceptual incarceration. We've been incarcerated by concepts. One of the concepts being that you got to be a PhD to do something. No, you got to do a study. The Gnostics said that. They said you don't need anybody to credentialize you. Go on off and study, and you can get there. In the north side of the Great Pyramid is the entrance to an underground tunnel, which is bored through 350 feet of solid rock. 350 feet of solid rock. At an angle of 26 degrees, 17 minutes to the horizon. Alpha Draconis, or Theban, was the pole star about 3,440 BC, and for several hundred years before and after that date. At its lowest culmination, when 3 degrees and 42 minutes from the pole, this star shone down the underground tunnel. The ascending passage runs off from the underground tunnel of the pyramid at the baseline level and leads to the Grand Gallery. Both the ascending passage and the Grand Gallery are inclined to the horizon at an angle of 26 degrees and 17 minutes, the same as that of the underground tunnel, but in the opposite direction. These passages seem to have served two purposes. First, they enable the builders to orient the base and the lower layers of the masonry up to the king's chamber in a true north and south line. And secondly, the passages were so arranged that the Grand Gallery could serve as the equivalent of the equatorial telescope of the modern astronomical observatory. So the scientists say that the pyramids were built as an observatory, not as a tomb.
Yeah, just to say,
Yes.
there's fact to that, because when I went over there, I went to Egypt a couple years ago, and in the smallest of the 3 large pyramids, you could go in, they had, and you go down on I guess about almost a 45-degree angle. I don't know if anybody else has ever done that, and it's about that high. You have to scrunch up, and you could tell that wasn't for bringing a sarcophagus down, which would be massive because it's so small, nobody could carry it. That was for probably observing, because it's a narrow area, maybe about this wide, right? Allow, one train of people is coming down as you're going up, or vice versa. It's about that high, and you have to, if you're a little claustrophobic, you don't want to deal with it, but if it's a once-in-a-lifetime deal like I felt it was, I had to go. And when you get down to the bottom, there's a room, and the room didn't seem like it was for any